Morning, everyone. I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us today for our webinar, 10 Tips for Better Business Events Monitoring, pardon me. Now, throughout the event, please feel free to submit any questions that you might have in the panel located at the right-hand side of your screen, and we will answer as many questions as possible after the presentation. So with that, why don't we go ahead and get started? Now today the topic is TIBCO Business Events and 10 tips or best practices for monitoring its performance so that you can A, identify developing problems based on real-time performance trends displayed alongside of historical context, B, rapidly pinpoint the source of errors, and C, recover as quickly as possible. In other words, predict and prevent incidents and protect your company from embarrassing outages. Now with that, I would actually like to start off the webinar by introducing our special guest, Kritika, who is Senior Product Manager for TIBCO Business Events at TIBCO Software. And she's going to talk to us a little bit about the importance of monitoring TIBCO Business Events. So with that, welcome, Kritika.
There you go. Thanks, David. So just to give you a bit of background, I've been with TIBCO for about 7 years, working in one or more ways with the product, business events. I was a PSG consultant helping customers with event processing solutioning prior to moving to product management. So I think it kind of gives me an overall perspective of the product, use cases, and how one should execute successful BE applications. So having said that, I'm assuming most of you on the call sort of already know what Business Events does. It's an event processing offering of TIBCO, which has been helping customers across various industries, transportation, logistics, airline, telco, banking, which is helping them solve this key problem area. How do I act on data in real time? So this is relevant to use cases such as fraud detection, being able to formulate the right contextual offer in a retail setup. How do you provide proactive customer service so as to not lose your customer, anticipate and handle flight disruptions in airlines, routing of trucks based on weather and traffic conditions. All these are mission critical apps, and the main idea why customers use business events is to reduce or eliminate the decision latency. So event processing in general is becoming increasingly important with the industry shifting towards fast data, where big data and after the fact is just not enough, and there is a need to act on this information at the source. So when running these critical business processes and business events, monitoring plays a very important role to make sure your applications are running as expected and there is no downtime, because that would mean loss in revenue or an opportunity. So there are several different things that could disrupt normal operations. There could be network glitches, slow running applications leading to missed SLAs. Other potential problems could include CPUs being maxed out. You have memory leaks. All this would result in a potential outage. So being able to manage this is what monitoring helps you do. So it actually gives you capabilities to detect unusual activity, course correct before it's too late. We all know dissecting the root cause of an issue after the fact that it's failed is not just about fixing a bug in the product or the application. It's having to reconcile all the in-flight transactions. How do you handle with data loss? So all this is what monitoring helps you foresee and correct before it's too late. Moving on. So there are various different ways how you can monitor business events applications. These are a few. TIBCO Hawk and TIBCO Business Events Monitoring and Management is something what TIBCO offers. And RTView has a neat enterprise monitor, and RTView monitor specifically designed for business events. And for the purposes of this webinar, Glenn will actually be covering some of the 10 great tips that you can actually follow to monitor business events applications to eliminate any outage or be able to proactively service your application when needed. Over to you, Glenn.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Kritika. Appreciated that very much. Appreciate your involvement. So this is part of a series of webinars that we give based on, for the most part, TIBCO products. So this one today is going to be focused on TIBCO RTView business events. But before we start, I would just like to explain that today this presentation is brought to you from two different companies, TIBCO, represented by Kritika, and SL, which is represented both by David and myself, and then later on Gopi. RTView business events is actually sold in two forms. So there's the standalone form, where monitoring is pretty much restricted just to those activities and events around business events. This product is sold either directly by TIBCO or through RTView. But it's important you understand that no matter where you buy it from, the result is identical. So yeah, it's the same product. It's also sold only this time by SL Corporation as a pluggable adapter for the RTView Enterprise Monitor. And when used in this format, it is part of a solution that provides visibility and access into the entire infrastructure. So not just TIBCO, but also, for example, IBM and Oracle products. So it's important that you understand that regardless of where you buy them from, as standalone products, they are both identical. So for today, what we're going to do is deal with a total of 10 tips. The first 6 or 7 will be geared towards business events as a standalone product. And then the final 3, we'll start showing you the added benefit of integrating TIBCO BE monitoring into Enterprise Manager. So to begin with then, tip number 1, our first tip, says make monitoring part of your daily routine. Now obviously we all monitor throughout the day, but what we encourage our users to do is to use RTView to complete a sort of readiness check when they first begin their shift or when they first check into work. This readiness check can give you a pretty good idea of what the current state is and also allow you to understand how you got there. You can review perhaps the last 8 or 12 or 16 hours, and you can understand exactly what's happened since you were there last. These self-same reports will help you filter out all of the noise and prepare information that you can then pass on to other support teams when you escalate. Also, the reports can be attached to trouble tickets. And finally, they can be used when you go into the much dreaded RCA meeting or post-mortem. You'll also see later on that RTView makes sense of a dynamic BE environment, but it can also show you how BE fits into the bigger picture, how it becomes part of the overall application flow. Okay? So the first part about monitoring being part of your routine, it immediately helps you prioritize, it helps you filter out the non-critical events, helps you focus on those that the business feel are the most important. So our second tip is talking about sharing the information that you have. What we find is that sharing a common source of truth reduces the confusion surrounding SEV1 and SEV2 incidents. It also means that different teams can look at the same information at the same time in the same format and hopefully draw the same conclusions. We all know what it's like when we're in the middle of a very, very business critical event. Everybody's running around trying to find out what happens. Everybody's looking at their own source of information. And then once the SEV1 call starts, of course, everybody's referencing different sources of metrics. So what we're saying is that if you share those metrics, and if RTView becomes your single source of information, then a lot of that confusion is reduced, and people are looking, as we said, at the same set of information at the same time. Another thing that RTView allows you to do is provide browser access so that not only do you have to rely on email, but what you can do is send out the URL to the particular screen you're looking at to everybody involved in the resolution activities, and they can all look at exactly the same information at the same time. Finally, remember that sharing information doesn't mean sharing control. Safely sharing means that you give read-only access to those filtered views, those filtered reports that are appropriate to the viewer's application, platform, or domain. You avoid any of those inadvertent problems where you have to perhaps give admin access to people that really shouldn't have it. So our third tip deals with the alerts. Everything is really geared towards the alerts. And our position is that you need to simplify the alert configuration and management. So when alerting is a high maintenance task, then thresholds are often left as sort of out of box, as global. Net result, you get screens of alerts that are really kind of meaningless, which means that you don't see the real alerts until it's too late. If you change the thresholds to suppress those alerts globally, then of course you don't even get the alerts until it's too late. RTView can provide a centralized, flexible alerting system. This allows you to very easily differentiate the components and therefore the alerts that apply to the business critical applications so that that natural filtering happens and allows you to prioritize. We also maintain the history. So within our historical repository, we're storing all of these events, all of these alerts. This allows you very easily then to later apply a filter that will say, okay, show me all of the cluster or node rule firing rate equal high alerts for the last 6 months. And by looking and using those filters, you can start to see patterns and you can start targeting in on some of the weak systems. Other benefits of a centralized system, which is the one we're advocating here, if it's centralized, it means that you only need to change the rule once on the central system. You don't need to go out and replicate this rule across a number of different systems. Everything is done centrally. It also means that because these rules are being executed away from the host system, it doesn't introduce stress on those host systems. And then finally, a centralized alerting system or centralized alert management system allows for far easier integration with service desks and other monitoring systems. Tip number 4, again, we're going to talk about how important it is to understand the history. So many times we find ourselves working on individual issues, and the same issues come up time and time and time again. And I think a lot of that is because it gets lost in the fog. And so we're not able to see the patterns. And so we're not able to see and actually proactively go in and make shifts and adjustments so that the problems are completely avoided in the first place. Another thing is that we know that even sophisticated organizations often have to waste a couple of hours, sometimes more than that, going through the process of detecting a problem, identifying which failing system is causing that event, and then relating that failing component or process to the overall business application, and from business application up to the business service. That time is wasted because it's only when that's done that can you really start to prioritize in alignment with business needs. And it's only at that time that you can actually start in and take remedial action. RTView allows you to reduce this time frame to a couple of minutes simply because we're pulling all of that information together and presenting it using the same time scales. So in this screen, we see how a single at-a-glance view can provide all of the relevant information without having to go to several different sources and trying to marry that information together. Here we can see information about the events received, the rules fired, how effective the caching system was used, and finally how the backing store has been utilized. We're also able to see whether this problem has been trending up, whether this is something that's been accumulating over time that perhaps we should have been able to detect earlier, or whether it's actually a spike, which is something that is an event that just happened, and that has triggered another event further down the line, and we're actually seeing the result within business events. It's useful to understand what type of problem in order to understand how to fix the problem. The next tip talks about how we need to get granular with the performance data, and that doesn't always mean going down to the nitty-gritty. Sometimes and quite often that's overkill and not useful. So what RTView is able to provide you with are different levels of information, from the highest level, which is something you kind of monitor through the corner of your eye, and that can be perhaps a heat map or a dashboard. We then provide a quick drill down process, so within 3 or 4 clicks you can go from the highest business service level down to looking at that particular inference node, so you can understand exactly what's happened. So, as I was explaining, RTView BE can provide roles that are appropriate for different groups. We can provide information at a high sort of summary level so that things can be monitored through dashboards or heat maps. And we can allow fast drill down so that you can actually start looking at the really detailed granular information for diagnostic purposes. BE can provide information organized intelligently so that information about clusters, inference and storage nodes, information about events, performance information, also logical information related to concepts, as well as connectivity information through channels and agents, etc. So all of this information is organized and able to be presented out with just a few clicks. Our next step deals with monitoring the backing store. So the backing store is something that's often difficult to get to. So what we do is as you can see from this screen, we make information about the backing store an integral part of the cache node summary. So the backing store is, we all know that the purpose of the backing store is to provide persistence and reliability rather than being dependent upon everything just in memory. But it also exposes another area of risk. So RTView can be used to check the performance in the availability of the backing store. It lets you quickly understand how much demand is being placed on it, how fast it's responding, and actually whether it's still connected. I think we'll all agree it's embarrassing in 2015 to have application problems caused because you've run out of disk space or you've lost connectivity to the storage array. Tip number 7, looking for exceptional event flooding and rule firing rates. So these are things that are quite often created by external systems. You need to be able to identify those very quickly. You need to avoid surprises. So these are just some of the known conditions that you can be looking for and you can set alerts for. So we can detect event flooding, changes in rule firing rates early so that you can proactively take corrective or remedial action. So now we start moving into the area that deals with TIBCO BusinessEvents integrated into the RTView Enterprise Monitor. This is the SL solution suite for those people that have a need to monitor an application flow, perhaps from end to end. So this allows us to look not just at platform-related information, whether it be BW or business events or ActiveSpaces or EMS, but it also allows you to start adding in the idea of a logical layer. So now we're able to associate that part of the stack, the physical part of the stack, if you like, with the logical layer, which are the business applications and business services. And this is what allows us to quickly understand the business impact of an event, perhaps at a VM level. So tip number 8, this is talking about correlation performance with the dependent databases, hosts, VMs, and other infrastructures. I think everybody understands that BE is a component in a flow. Okay, BE is seldom ever used purely on its own. It receives information, it sends information on. What we need to be able to do is to look at BE in the context of all of the other systems. So we need to be able to look at BE as we are here, where we're looking at a particular node host, but we're also able to see the EMS and the BW elements along with the JVM and the host information. because these are all interdependent. Across here, we're not just seeing alerts. What we're looking now at is the stress factor. So we're able to look at this BE node, and we can see, yeah, we're green, we're getting good, we're good. But now all of a sudden, we start operating in an area of stress. And what we're able to do is to normally understand cause and effect. We might see that this node is dependent upon this particular host. When this host slows down, maybe because the CPU gets maxed out, then this means that we've got, maybe we're being starved of CPU resources, maybe memory resources. In any event, we can see the correlation between the BE node, the BW engine, the EMS server, and the compute layer. So that is one of the critical things. Also, we find out quite often that we're trying to resolve slow application problems within BE, when in fact a few seconds with a screen like this would tell us, hey, you know what? We're seeing the symptom in BE, but the actual cause is much further down the stack in the VM host. Okay. Finally, when you're having to deal with administrators for BW or administrators for the network or the Linux administrator, it's very useful to be able to point to a single screen that shows all of these things combined. You don't have to start getting into arguments about, well, when I checked my report, you know, my 5-minute buckets were perfectly okay. So this is how you can improve communication by sharing the information again. Also, these stress points, finally, very important, that you can periodically take action to move the demand, to move the workload around so that the majority of these move towards the green. This will increase the stability of the order service application, and when you increase the stability, you decrease the amount of time you have to spend firefighting. Another thing that's often overlooked is now that ActiveSpaces is so tightly integrated into business events, ActiveSpaces being used for the caching, really you need to have visibility into that environment. So here we're looking at the ActiveSpaces metaspace summary. This particular metaspace happens to be check cache, which is one of the business events caches. So we're able to correlate the performance within ActiveSpaces. We start seeing alerts here on this particular metaspace. We know that it's going to have an impact on business events. You need RTView EM in order to get this visibility into these two different solutions. Finally, the summary view, if you like. This is the overarching capability of RTView Enterprise Manager. What we're able to do is to take that compute layer that we talked about, add it to the logical and the business service layer, and we're able to represent back out to the user groups, to the application owners, to the business community. We're able to represent back out the flow diagram of their business applications in a format that is recognizable to them. Most companies have a standard set of flow diagrams that explain to anybody who's interested what the flow of the application is and where the dependencies are. So we take that flow diagram and model it within RTView EM so that they become dynamic. On this particular icon here, showing JFK, if I were to drill into this, it would take me down to a component level view of JFK. And then from there, I can go down to the detailed view. So when this goes to orange, I can drill down with just a few clicks, maybe 3 or 4 clicks, and start looking at what's causing that problem within BE or BW or EMS. Okay? This allows you to very quickly prioritize and deal with those business issues before you start dealing with those issues that are perhaps just internal. Okay, well that completes my part of today's presentation. I'm going to pass it on to David, but I would like to thank you for your time and your attention.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Glenn, and thank you, Kritika, for joining us today. So let's quickly review the 10 tips that Glenn outlined. First, obviously making monitoring of business events part of your daily routine, not just something you do when something breaks, but actively, proactively monitoring it so that you can predict and prevent any sort of developing incidents. 2, be able to, share metrics with different people in your team, whether it's, other TIBCO middleware operations guys, or it's your application support team, or the developers, or whomever, but not only share it, but share it in a safe way. 3rd is make alert configuration easy. Go ahead and, define alerts, not individually one at a time, but globally. That's going to save you a lot of time, gives you a lot of flexibility, and of course you can always make exceptions. 4 is use historical metrics to your advantage. I mean, it's critical to have real-time metrics and knowing what's going on right now, but to have that historical perspective so that you can see, well, when did this start, and how did it develop, and maybe even looking at what happened in the middle of last night, even if it already resolved itself in the morning. 5th is make sure that you have enough granular data in order to be able to get a clear and detailed picture of the performance of your business events environment. 6, look at your backing store. That's something that can be an Achilles heel if you're not aware that your backing store is getting too full or going too slow, or eventually going to impact the performance of your overall event processing application. 7 is look out for event flooding. That's something that's not necessarily caused in business events. It's something upstream where all of a sudden, you're normally expecting 100 events a second, and now all of a sudden you got 10,000 events a second. That is going to eventually, if not quickly, overwhelm your system. So if you're looking out for those increases in rates, whether you're doing a visual scan or whether you've set up some of the automated alerts, that will give you a heads up that, something bad's going to happen if you don't do something. 8 is, take a look at not only business events and how it's operating, but also in the context of the other infrastructure around business events. It's either going to affect the performance of business events, or it's going to be affected by the performance of business events. So having that bigger picture is, again, going to give you more clues as to what's going wrong, whether it's in your system or somebody else's system, because at the end of the day, we all want to, get back to optimum performance as quickly as possible. 9th is look at our ActiveSpaces. Again, that's a core part of your system, and to not only be able to have visibility into business events, but as well as the ActiveSpaces that's supporting it is crucial. And lastly, try and integrate some of your business impact into the way you respond to these alerts. Sometimes you might actually get alerts from a number of different business event systems, whether it's dev or production or geographically distributed. How do you know which one to respond to first? Well, by integrating that enterprise view and being able to associate this instance, this node of business events with this particular high value application is going to give you a good indication of where you should go first. So with that, I'm going to kind of wrap it up here. Today, we mostly talked about, the act of actually monitoring business events itself. We didn't get too deeply into the products that we were showing you today. So if you'd like to find out more information about the products that you saw when we were illustrating it, you can simply Google TIBCO RTView or RTView Enterprise Monitor. Again, RTView is the dedicated business events monitoring tool available directly through TIBCO. RTView Enterprise Monitor is that enterprise-wide platform which supports plugins for not only business events, but BusinessWorks and EMS and ActiveMatrix and ActiveSpaces and Hawk and adapters and a number of different things, as well as databases and app servers and hosts and VMs and all that kind of good stuff. Either way, these monitoring solutions are really professional grade monitoring solutions designed specifically for middleware monitoring. We're not just trying to shoehorn some middleware adapters into something that was designed for something else, all with the goal of being able to prevent incidents, predict your future resource usage, and protect your company and your department from embarrassing outages. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and take some questions. I'd like to remind you that you can submit your questions via the chat QA panel on the right-hand side of your screen. I'd also like to point out that the slides from today's presentation, as well as a recording of the webinar, will be made available for download. We'll be sending out a follow-up email with the link to get to the video so you can rewatch it or share it with a colleague or what have you. So with that, we've received a couple of questions already. So let's go ahead and get started. And I think, we'll try and wrap this up in about 5 minutes or so, okay? So our first question is, hey, by the way, I am remiss in not introducing Gopi Parimi. Gopi is our TIBCO middleware expert here at SL and is intimately familiar not only with our products, but is the TIBCO products that we're monitoring as well. So welcome, Gopi, and Gopi is going to be answering some of these questions for us. So, and Gopi, you'll probably want to unmute yourself. First question is for you, and that's, how does RTView get these metrics? Does it use Hawk to get these metrics?
No, primarily it uses JMX. BE exposes a whole lot of MBeans via JMX, and we get most of these metrics using JMX. And we also have another methodology to get using Hawk microagents, but that is more on-demand basis.
Okay, fantastic. I know that there's a number of ways you can skin a cat, so they say. As a follow-on to that, let me ask you, what is the refresh rate for getting these metrics? Is it, real time or every half hour, or can you give us an insight into
because
that?
we are getting the metrics through JMX, we're not putting, we don't want to put much load on it, so we're getting metrics every 15 seconds, but that is pretty configurable depending on how much granularity you want into the metrics.
Great. So I can make it every 5 seconds, or I can make it every 30 seconds, depending on
that is right.
what's
Yes.
better. Fantastic. Okay. Let's see. We have a business question here, which is, can I buy TIBCO RTView for business events directly from TIBCO? And I'll take that. And the answer is yes. That is for sale. TIBCO not only sells the TIBCO RTView for business events, they also have TIBCO RTView for BusinessWorks, for EMS, a standard monitor. It's in production at quite a few customer sites. As I said, if you Google it, you'll find the web page on tibco.com that gives you a lot of rich information. There's a detailed community on TIB community as well. But if you are interested in the enterprise version, where you can see maybe it's all of your application infrastructure. Maybe it's just, I want to see all my TIBCO components in one application as opposed to several different standalone applications. You're going to want to look at RTView Enterprise Monitor, which is available from SL. Again, you can Google that and find out a lot more information, and we're happy to give you more information on that. So let me see. I've got another technical question here in regards to history. So Gopi, can you tell us how long do we store these metrics in history?
We store it for up to 15 days, and we automatically purge any data older than 15 days. But if you want for the data to store longer, yes, you can configure for more than 15 days if you want.
Fantastic. Okay, I've got another technical question here for you, Gopi. What percentage does RTView use of the memory allocated for the business events inference engine? And I'm not sure if you're getting at, is this an agent that runs on business events and uses up some of the memory?
We are not specifically, we never really measured the memory usage of using the MBeans on the inference agent. But I can say the impact is pretty normal because the BE engine, end of the day, the inference engine, which is not actually processing anything when we are trying to get the monitoring metrics. We are just pinging it every 15-second intervals for getting the statistics, which the engine doesn't have to work anything for, because it's just the API. The JMX MBeans are just giving us the metrics. So yeah, the impact is pretty minimal. but I mean, I don't have a specific number or measure on how much impact it would put on the inference agent.
Okay. Excellent answer. I got a follow-on from Rakesh that said, yep, that's exactly what he was asking. And the follow-on, another follow-on from Rakesh is, doesn't it have to work to give the metrics? And maybe that's a question of the fact, you know, even though the MBean thing is running on business events, the actual RTView server and display server is running on a separate server that shouldn't impact business events. Is that right, Gopi?
That is right. I mean, in general, it looks like, I mean, this is a follow-on question from the same guy. So it is, I mean, the engine itself has to work. But again, when you say work, it's not processing anything. It's just giving, when you're tapping onto it, it's just pushing out data, the metric data, I mean, the health data real time, which is every 15 seconds. So it's not, I mean, as I said, there is no measure to it, but I mean, it's no impact. I mean, the impact is pretty negligible.
Okay, I think that covers it. So that's our last question now. If you guys have any follow-up questions, you can send them to us directly. I encourage you to use TIB Community. That way everybody in the community benefits. You can either look up the RTView community in TIB Community, or you can ask it in the business events ones too. Now, in terms of next steps, if any of you guys are interested in getting a more detailed, personalized demonstration, just give us a call or respond to some of our emails. We're happy to give you an in-depth, personal, one-on-one demonstration over WebEx or something like that. If you're ready to start a free trial, I know that both TIBCO and SL can help you get started with a free, no obligation trial. Again, find us here on TIB Community. We have lots of resources available on both TIBCO.com as well as SL.com as well as TIBCommunity.com. So with that, I want to wrap it up. I want to thank everybody for making the time to join us today. We would love to hear your feedback, not only on the presentation as well as, different monitoring tips that we can cover in the future. And even, we often solicit on TIB Community, give us your own tips for how to better monitor business events or BusinessWorks or EMS or whatever, because we just kind of want to share the love and help everybody in the community get a little bit better at their craft of making sure that the platforms that they're responsible with are up and performing and that everybody's happy. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end it. Thank you again for your time. We will talk to you soon.